Hello there. Kelby Cross here with the Hammerdown Time podcast. It's about time. It is Hammerdown time. Man, nothing like taking off the, busiest part of the racing season, of course it was unintentional, I love when my lovely job keeps me away from the things that I actually enjoy doing. That's very fun. But just a ton to talk about. A ton happened. It seemed like there was even more storylines around the big races that we saw in the month of money in particular. Um, of course, that refers to the Ironman at I-55, and then of course going all the way through to the Knoxville Nationals. Kings Royal, just fantastic this year. I know we saw a lot of carnage. I hope they change nothing about Eldora Speedway. That's the character that we see out of that track night in and night out. Yes, it wrecked a lot of race cars, and unfortunately, we're going to talk about some of the injuries that happened that weekend. But I mean, Eldora Speedway is the greatest dirt track in the world, and we don't need to make any changes to it. So anybody suggesting those can keep them to themselves. Let's just put it nicely that way. Yeah, like I said, Anthony Macri came off the porch to beat the Kings, to beat the Outlaws at the Kings Royal. Uh, you know, give it to the posse. They came off the porch this year. I mean, as for the big crown jewel events, we see, lots of non-national regulars winning them this year, which is crazy. Um, at least for the big two that have happened thus far. But the top three in the high limit points, Brad Sweet, Aaron Reitzel, and Tyler Courtney got involved in nasty crashes over that weekend. All three of them got hurt. Tyler Courtney actually required back surgery for his, and he's going to be out for the foreseeable future, probably the rest of the 2025 season. Aaron Reitzel, they're talking about maybe September being back for him. He got a broken foot that weekend. Both of those guys are out for the long term. Of course, Brad Sweet is already back. Um, Something else that happened that weekend was the Larson and David Gravel kind of rivalry started. Or well, I shouldn't say started, but it definitely came to a head. The Gravel said that Larson threw some pretty close sliders at him at the night before the Kings Royal feature, and then they of course stopped at that after Gravel spun out Larson, which is a stupid move, especially um, on the exit of a turn at Eldora, which I don't know if you ever played the video game, but you can never, and I assume that's exactly like real life. There's no way it's any different. Um, that it can be kind of surprising to see just a car sitting in the middle of the racetrack, even if you're on a cool down lap. Um, but yeah, hard racing at that, and it was fun to watch. Macedo tried to catch Rico late, which I really thought that Rico was gonna absolutely win the Kings Royal. Macri really came out of nowhere to win that one on Saturday night, but um, David Gravel in a post race interview, Larson just called it good hard racing, which is what it was. But Gravel said that he popped off. Said some things about Larson after the race. He said that Larson doesn't do this for a living. I'm gonna let that marinate for a second because what? Kyle Larson doesn't drive race cars for a living. Kyle Larson doesn't drive. Okay, okay. No, you're right. Kyle Larson doesn't drive race cars for a living. Um, sure. We'll go with that, David. Um, and of course, uh, Larson made a joking reference to it, kind of carried over into the Knoxville Nationals, and you know, after transferring into the Knoxville Nationals after on his prelim night, which Larson does, um, and then he fired back at some point. David Gravel did with "I can't do what Larson does." Yeah, we know. We saw your NASCAR attempt, David Gravel. Oh, hey, look, it's every hope I've ever had of having David Gravel on this podcast. There it goes. It's gone. It's never gonna happen. Anyways, so we saw a lot of driver changes over the summer. I'd say the first shocking one was Gio Scelzi leaving KPC at the Kings Royal, and then he eventually takes over for Tyler Courtney in the 7BC at the Knoxville Nationals, and did fairly well. And he's going to follow High Limit now in the 7BC. One that really wasn't much of a head scratcher was Spencer Baston out at Jason Myers Racing. They just weren't super competitive this year, and honestly, I was kind of surprised when the Jason Myers Racing team hired him. This year, I know that it's impossible to replace to fill the shoes of generational talent like Corey Day, but he had one high limit top five before he was dismissed from the Jason Myers Racing 14. And yes, he put the car in the feature, but I the JMR 14 definitely expect more than that. It's kind of a side point here. I find it funny when teams try to say, they pull the PR move of, oh, we mutually parted ways. Like, no, actually, that driver was fired. Like, he was definitely fired. Can we just say that he was fired? So Jason Myers Racing moves to a one-car operation, Corey Day behind the wheel. Of course, Spencer Baston loses his national ride and, finds another gear with the Works Limited car in California thus far. He got two top fives with High Limit and finished second on night one of the Gold Cup. So finally remembered how to drive a race car, which is pretty cool. I'm going to preface this next one with this. Obviously, best of luck to Spencer Baston going forward. And who knows who the Jason Myers guys are going to hire next year. Anyways, one that was just a shock was Donnie Schatz getting fired from Tony Stewart Racing after a 17-year partnership between those two. If you had that on your bingo card for Donnie freaking Schatz, 10-time World of Outlaws champion, 11-time Knoxville Nationals winner, getting fired mid-season. If you had that on your bingo card, you're lying. There's no way. It was certainly not the send-off I expected for Donnie Schatz. Of course, I didn't know that there was more. I've heard that Donnie ran off Ricky Warner, which those two have been together since 2005. And that, which is bonkers to even think, with as much turnover as it seems like as there is in racing these days in the modern era. It's just crazy to think that those two were together for that long. So, but after that, and then motor changes and things of that nature, and it really sounds like maybe Donnie was I don't want to call him a diva, but that's the word that's coming to mind. For lack of a better term, we'll just say he was kind of being more of a diva than Tony Stewart was willing to put up with, and they weren't really producing. So after 8 World of Outlaws titles and 234 feature wins, 9 Knoxville Nationals, 5 Kings Royals, 3 National Opens, and the 2015 Gold Cup Race of Champions behind the wheel of the Tony Stewart Racing 15, Donnie Schatz was fired. And right now is just kind of bouncing around. Right now, I believe he's in the Lunstra 15 because he was supposed to be in the Big Game Tree Stands 15. That became the 15 because Donnie came to Big Game Tree Stands. That's probably the number that's going to follow him no matter where he goes. But he... that the first night he was at Ogilvy with the World of Outlaws and biffed it into 1 and 2, for lack of a better term, took it in there way too hot and just destroyed the big game tree stands car. And so, I mean, maybe it wasn't like a motor issue. Maybe Tony Stewart Racing wasn't to blame. Um, and I've heard people point out, I thought maybe this meant Tony Stewart Racing was going to shut down, but that wouldn't make sense. If that was the case, if Tony Stewart was just going to focus full time on doing drag racing or whatever he's doing, it would make a lot more sense just to let Donnie finish it out. Maybe give him a proper send off as, hey, here's this guy who won a bunch of championships for us. This partnership really, I mean, one of the most legendary the sport has ever seen. Certainly this modern ages, Steve and Carl Kinzer was Donnie Schatz and Donnie Schatz and Ricky Warner, and then Donnie Schatz and while they were at Tony Stewart Racing as well. So I think it's pretty fair to say Donnie is losing a step or has lost a step. I don't think that can be ignored anymore. Um, he but who knows? Maybe he's gonna land on his feet somewhere. I don't think the big game tree stands thing is long term. I think it was just gonna be now the Lunstra. Now he's in the Lunstra car. Lunstra and Big Game kind of teamed up, so they're behind Donnie at least through North Dakota. So I'm sure he'll find somebody who's willing to put him up for a World of Outlaws ride on the West Coast, maybe. Um, I would love to post this as a question to Jason Myers, like, just to see how fast he'd say no. Just like, hey, why don't you put, that guy, that your rival was your rival for so many years out on the road with the Outlaws. What about why don't you put him in your car? I just want to see how fast he'd say no to that. I feel like that would be kind of comical, but that's probably just in my mind. Best of luck going to Donnie going forward. So I am curious, looking forward, where does Gio Selzy go in 2026? There's a couple of really decent rides out there right now that are looking to secure a future. Jason Myers Racing and Tony Stewart Racing. We just talked about him. Um, you know, Kerry Madsen's gonna fill the Tony Stewart Racing seat for now. I don't. That's not a long term thing. Kerry Madsen is no longer a driver to build around like that. He's kind of on his last leg too. Not that he's not fast or hasn't had a good career. He's another old guy. Um, Still got it, but he's kind of he's more of a regional guy now. I would say he's Kerry Madsen. Um, I mean, does Gio stay in the Clausen Marshall car and Tyler Courtney has to find a new ride? I mean, if so, Tyler Courtney becomes the biggest free agent in recent memory. That Gio is the biggest free agent in recent memory right here. I think this is it. We're gonna see owners lining up for this driver. I think he can call any car owner in the country, and they'll try to figure out a way to get him in their car. I mean, he's only 23 years old, and I think he's got a bright future. So, another kid with a bright future is Buddy Kofoid. He is the highest earning sprint car driver in 2025. I believe it's north of $600,000 so far. I hope to see that pairing with Roth Motorsports and Buddy Kofoid stick with each other going into 2026. I know we still have a lot of racing to do in 2025, but I mean, the Outlaw, unless David Gravel really, falls off, he doesn't have it in hand. I know, but it's looking really good for him. So why not? look forward a little bit. I don't see any reason why that team can't compete for a World of Outlaws title in 2026. Buddy Kofoid has had a great season. He had the greatest rookie season ever with the Outlaws last year, and I don't see any reason why he can't compete for the World of Outlaws title next year. I mean, even if he puts some pressure on Gravel for this one this year. So that's kind of the national headlining, stuff coming into, we'll get to a couple of other high limit things here pretty quick. But first, NARC. How about NARC? We haven't talked about them since we previewed the fastest 5 days of motorsports, and Kelby revealed how much he doesn't like modern sprint car racing formats. That has not changed. Invert the feature. Invert the feature. So the fastest 5 days of motorsports really was the James McFadden show. The guy who was in the States for less than 24 hours, won at Southern Oregon Speedway. First time he ever saw the dang place. And went 4 for 5 in his first 5 races with the Tarleton Motorsports team, largely at all tracks he had seen for the first time in the Pacific Northwest. I will say, I know it's an Australian custom, but the shoey will never not be disgusting. And of course, back to some national stuff. J Mac has not really, not really missed a beat. Um, Kind of puts the people on notice when he won the Capitani. In the Tarleton car, which was probably the biggest win that the Tarleton Motorsports car has had on a national scale since Jason Myers won a prelim night at the Knoxville Nationals back in 2012. Um, Part of that is because I just wanted to mention Jason Myers winning. Got to highlight the Grace Harbor race. This racetrack is kind of surprised. Because the first couple of times I watched the NARC, kind of Pacific Northwest, tour go through Grace Harbor, I wasn't really impressed with it. But then this year was easily the finish of the weekend, candidate for the top race of overall, maybe one of the best that NARC has had thus far this season. With Trey Starks, he battles forward, then gives away the win in traffic. J Mac just sailed that thing in there on the last lap for that coming to the checkered flag. Trey Starks and Dominic Selzy rounded out the podium. I mean, think about that. You know, that trio. Um, of course, that was all leading up to the Super Dirt Cup. As for the Super Dirt Cup, can we just pretend like the 360 years didn't happen? You know, I mean, um, Levi Klatt, easily the biggest upset of the NARC season. Bigger than Jesse Schlattfeld winning one of the fastest 5 days of motorsports nights, which I forgot to mention, but he won at Cottage Grove, so congrats to Jesse Schlattfeld. Um, and he had to work for it too. It's not like, with the deep inversions on the first couple of nights at the Dirt Cup. It could kind of turn into, okay, the guy up front just kind of runs away, and Skagit Speedway, not quite as racy as we would like. So, just kind of watch the guys in the back try to pass 5 cars and become the top guy going into Saturday night. Um, but Levi Klatt, stock Justin Peck. Of course, Justin Peck was out there in the Rudine car, passed him 28 laps down, and then drank from a bottle of maple syrup, which is 100 times better than a shoey. So in only his 16th start, Levi Klatt is able to his 16th start in a 410 sprint car. The former Sportsman Sprint Car champion is able to pick up the win on night number 1 of the Dirt Cup over Justin Peck, Shane Golobic, Justin Sanders, and Tanner Holmes, who went from 11th up to 5th. On night number 2, Justin Sanders passes James McFadden on the last lap to win the second night of the Super Dirt Cup. J-Mac was second, of course. Tanner Holmes 10th to 3rd. Jason Solwald, Joel Myers Jr., who made the trek out to the Pacific Northwest, who's just been absolutely tearing it up in the Midwest this year. Joel Myers Jr. and Caleb Henry both. Caleb Henry, I actually heard today, is the All-Star points champion, or points leader right now is Caleb Henry. So going into Saturday night of the Dirt Cup, it was Trey Starks, Tanner Holmes, Shane Golobic, and Justin Sanders were the lock-ins. And in the finale, not gonna lie, kind of anticlimactic. It's just fun. You get these fun to watch first couple of nights of the Dirt Cup. And I mean, the Gold Cup does the same thing, where they put an invert in, and so you're watching races within the race, and then you go to the final night, and it's like, okay, well, that guy just ran away. We just put the fast guys at the front, and whatever. But so Tanner Holmes actually put a lot of pressure on Trey Starks, though. At times, but eventually, Trey Starks was able to race away in the second lap of the feature. After 15 years of trying to win the Super Dirt Cup, Trey Starks, who made his first 410 sprint car race at Skagit in 2010, picks up the victory. Tanner Holmes finished a career best second at the Dirt Cup after leading 4 laps. J-Mac in third, Shane Golobic fourth, Justin Sanders rounds out the top 5. And then just kind of running through the rest of July and early August with NARC, Tim Kading picked up. It's so cool to see the Kadings still out there, and picking up victories in 2025. Wins the Dave Lint Memorial at Petaluma. Justin Sanders was able to sweep the Howard Kading Classic at Ocean Speedway. Caleb Montgomery picked up his first NARC feature win at Santa Maria Speedway, his home track there in Napomo. And Bud Kading ends a 6-year drought. His first win since August of 2019, actually. Wins the Johnny Key Classic. He won his first in 1996, which is the year I was born. And then 29 years later, he won his second one. So awesome for Bud Kading. Joins Brent Kading and Howard Kading as multi-time winners of the Johnny Key Classic. Like I said, the Kadings winning races in California still is just very, very nostalgic and cool to see. The only thing that would make this better is getting the Pombo Sargent back at a Central Valley racetrack. We need the Pombo Sargent back. Pombo Sargent Classic, whether it's SCCT or, well, no, let's get it at NARC. Keep it NARC. It was a Golden State Challenge race. So get it at Kings or Tulare. Somebody get on that, please. Respectfully. Pony up. Come on now. So this random podcaster is telling you to pony up. Somebody put your money where your mouth is and get King Speedway back up, please. We just mentioned Santa Maria, a track that was shockingly shut down a couple of years ago. Calistoga, a place that I was surprised to hear that this place is coming back this year, and it's the next race for NARC. The Louis Vermeil Classic on August 30th and 31st with the USAC CRA. They'll both be there. Of course, that race is running against the Skagit Nationals, so, maybe next year don't do that. That's the best I got. Maybe just don't do that. Maybe not. We also, hopefully next year we'll be able to get a national touring series. I feel like High Limit needs to go there. Of course, Brad and Kyle, both from Northern California, both, wheeled non-wing cars around there. And if they're going to come to the Louis Vermeil, I would love to see them both in non-wing 410 sprint cars, along with Tyler Courtney and Shane Golobic, too. I haven't seen Shane Golobic wheel a non-wing 410 in a while. DJ Neto is still the points leader as he holds a 5-point lead over rookie Tyler Thompson. Sean Becker, Bud Kading, and Dominic Gordon round out the top 5. But how about it for Tyler Thompson? Rookie sensation, really, as that Maine Motorsports 35 is still in contention for the NARC title, which is insane. So from NARC, we'll move to High Limit. High Limit. I just want to point this out from one, this is one announcer's opinion. Chase Rodman sounds like he's losing his train of thought when he brings him to green. The whole "we are green" or like Beans from Rango, that the lizard movie, where she just kind of does her little, where she freezes for a little bit and then you know finally keeps talking. The West Coast swing prior to Gold Cup, we saw at the Thunderbolt Raceway, Corey Day, he started to use that diamond maneuver early and then figured out that, Papa was right, Ronnie Day's right. Roll the bottom and take the lead from Spencer Baston and run away from the field for the win at one of your home tracks. Spencer Baston, actually, in his first night in the Works Limited W, finishes second. Gio was in third. Brad Sweet and Justin Sanders, who's filling in for the injured Aaron Reitzel, puts the RSR 87 in fifth at the Thunderbolt. And then on the next night up in Placerville, the Gold Rush Classic, Corey Day, for all intents and purposes, could have had a weekend sweep here, but he ends up, running up over the back of Caleb Montgomery, who had put the 3 car on the pole and was holding his own until the very final lap when Justin Sanders finally breaks through for a National Series win at where else? The place that he has, a million laps and 100,000 victories. Placerville at the Gold Rush Classic. Justin Sanders finally gets it done. Now, and he could really be somebody who vies for a Gold Cup actually this weekend. Just, I'm not going to do a full Gold Cup preview because by the time this comes out, some of Gold Cup will already have happened. So we'll do a full Gold Cup recap on the next episode of the Hammerdown Time podcast. But Justin Sanders wins the Gold Rush Classic. Caleb Montgomery with a career best second. Corey Elias in third. Brad Sweet from 15th up to fourth. And Spencer Baston with 2 straight top fives with the High Limit in California. If only he had done that, at any time earlier this year. I will say if High Limit goes to Calistoga next year, they need to call whatever race they have if they do it. If the Skagit Nationals moves or whatever, if they're gonna race at Calistoga, I respectfully and humbly request that whatever race the High Limit has there, don't call it some, high stakes hustle or whatever. That's a pretty cool name, but it's not for Calistoga. I need either the Wine Country Classic or the Harvest Classic at Calistoga. Please. We actually need to bring back the Harvest Classic. So forget the Wine Country Classic. NARC can run that or something. But definitely, we need the Harvest Classic back at Calistoga. Brad Sweet is your points leader. Rico Abreu, Brent Marks, Tyler Courtney, and Aaron Reitzel, the top 5. It kind of it shouldn't have taken this long. I'm not going to say it just dawned on me because that's not true, but I don't know if I like Brad Sweet running for points with High Limit. You guys comment, let me know what you think. I don't think he should be. It's a conflict of interest, and it's got to be awkward, for the rest. It's certainly awkward for the rest of us watching Brad Sweet, crown himself champion every year in a series. I mean, I don't know if I think Gravel may have dethroned him, if he would have kept out with the World of Outlaws. But I don't mind him running, with High Limit, but I don't think he should be running for points. That's my opinion. I mean, the last time we saw something like this was Tony Stewart running with the All Stars, and I believe he had a run in with one of the big time series regulars. At the time was Chad Kemenaugh, and he ended up not running with the All Stars anymore because it was a conflict of interest. So, that's my opinion on Brad Sweet running for high limit points. I don't think it should happen. Run for wins all you want, but season long championships, I don't think so. So that wraps up the high limit and, kind of all the national stuff. We're going to focus on some more local here as the ASCS National Series is going to return to Montana for 2 weekends. The first up is the Harvey Ostermiller Memorial, which is this year is going to be 15,000 to win, 5,000 to win with the ASCS National Tour. As Jake Buback looks to win 3 in a row in Billings. He's a 2-time and defending Harvey Ostermiller Memorial winner. Of course, Harvey Ostermiller, for all the people in Montana who have been around sprint car racing, know that Harvey Ostermiller is a pivotal figure in the history of Montana sprint car racing, especially over in Billings. So fitting, very fitting of a big time race, the biggest race in the biggest dirt track race in the history of Montana is for Harvey. So we'll see Jake Buback try to go 3 in a row. Sam Haverteep leads the ASCS National Tour with 9 victories over Blake Hahn, Matt Covington, Jason Martin, and Kyler Johnson's how they'll come in. But, we'll see Sam there. Seth Bergman, Ryan Timms. Hello. What a possibly the biggest Knoxville Nationals upset ever. A guy wasn't running, he's not running any national touring series. He doesn't have an outlaw win, doesn't have a high limit win. Hardly seems like he hardly ever even get starts with those guys, but he won it. He's won a couple of races at Knoxville this year, and from the pole, his prelim night, he drove up from 8th, and had to run down the leaders to win and put the thing on the pole. So that was the. Comment below if you could think of a bigger upset than that one. The ones that kind of came to mind, were either Bobby Allen or Jason Johnson, but I think by the numbers, it's got to be Ryan Timms. Maybe not quite as, most popular driver type wins like Bobby Allen or Jason Johnson, but certainly Ryan Timms definitely putting the world on notice, because holy cats, what a win for that guy. And he's going to be in Billings this weekend at the Harvey Ostermiller. So definitely look for the Liebig car to be out in front over in Billings and battle with guys like Jake Buback and Sam Haverteep Jr. and Seth Bergman and, even the local guys like Kelly Miller and Garen Linder, Trevor Kirkland, Phil Dietz, looking to spoil the national party at the Ostermiller this weekend. And then, of course, over the Labor Day weekend, just mentioned NARC and High Limit are going to be running, but the ASCS National Tour is going to be in Great Falls with Montana Roundup. I'm very much looking forward to that one. I will be at that race. So, if you want to come say hi, come say hi. We'll see you at the races, like I say. And that's it for me. We'll see if I make it to Billings. Still kind of up in the air at this point. But like I said, I will be gearing up for that Montana Roundup in Great Falls over that Labor Day weekend. So until then, enjoy the Ostermiller weekend or wherever you're watching racing this weekend, Gold Cup, wherever. Yeah, it's good to be back. I'm Kelby Cross. We'll see you at the races. Hammerdown.